Hello. Today I want to talk about some of the basic steps in creating and sharing a Google Doc, and in doing so I'll use an example of how I've used it with one of my classes to get students collaborating and learning from each other. I'd completed a piece of work with my students and I was marking it, and I saw that a lot of the feedback, a lot of the responses from the students was incorrect. There was a lot of misconceptions coming through in the answers and a few common themes that suggested there was some parts of the work that the students could have tightened up on. Instead of going over it as a chalk and talk, which I knew the students, they'd shut off after I'd been talking for a few minutes and they wouldn't get the full benefit of what I was trying to get across. I needed some other way of getting that feedback to them. So I'm going to start off by creating a Google Doc. And it's always useful to give it a title that you'll recognize. And then the first thing that I wanted to do was to go over the themes that were common throughout a lot of the students' work. And I'm just going to cheat, and rather than typing it in, I'm going to copy it across from my other document. And in addition to the common misconceptions, the themes that were common throughout the pieces of work, there was also a number of individual misconceptions, and what I did was I copied these almost word for word from the students' work, and that made up these 17 statements that I wanted the students to go over in groups. So these were all sentences or statements that the students have made, and there's been something wrong with each of them that I wanted them to have a look at and try and correct. The statements up the top then the students would see, and that would provide them with the feedback to most of the class. And then below that there's these misconceptions. So I need to share this with my class, and to do that you go up into the share button here, and you can get the class email out of Hapara. If you're not sure how to do that, just catch up with me and I'll go through it with you. So that's the email address for my class. When I share any piece of work with this email address, it goes to each of my students. And the advantage of this over the smart copy in Hapara is I find the Hapara setting takes about 10 minutes to work for a class, whereas it takes a few seconds and the students will have it instantaneously. Now the trick here, if you want to send out a piece of work for the students so they each make their own copy, then I would set that to Can View, so when you share it with them they can't edit the document that you send them. And if you do want them to edit it, you can add a message and you can say something along the lines of make a copy and save it in your subject folder. And once they've done that, they've got their own copy they can edit. Nobody else can, well, apart from you, and it's saved in their subject folder, so you can see it through Hapara. Now that's not what I wanted to do today, so I'm not going to have that message in there, and I would set it on this occasion, because I want all of the students working on it at once. I'm going to say that they can all edit it, and then I would click OK, and this would appear in the sharing settings up here along with Can Edit at the end. I don't want to do that today, so I'm just going to assume that I've done it. It would be a bit strange if I sent it out again to my class. And in class, the instructions were, so students had this all sent out to them. The students were split up into groups of about 3, and each group had 3 statements they needed to work on, and they had to examine these carefully, identify what was wrong with them, and rewrite them as correct statements. And so each group had about 3 statements, so there was a little bit of overlap. There was an extra task here at the end. This statement had misconceptions in at least 2 places, and some quite deep ones, and so if anybody finished early then they could go on with that one, and it would certainly take them a bit more time to overcome it. Alright, so let's see what it looks like once the students have had a go. This is the document that the class had worked on. You can see the first comment here, and then the groups had colour-coded their responses to each of the statements. You can go into revision history through File and see revision history, and you can go right back to the beginning, to the original document, or you can go through, probably about 10 revisions a minute with students typing things in. So you can always go back to a previous state. You don't need to be worried about students deleting things. This is really cool because the students who have made responses show up in a colour, and you can see who has made that response. So I can see that Barnaby has made this little statement here. He's starting a response to that one. So they've had it for about 8 minutes. There's a lot of group discussion and a few people starting to enter their answers. If we move on about 10 minutes, then we can see a lot more in the way of responses to the statements. And again, you can see the colour relating to each specific student as they're making those responses. One of the really cool things was to go through the revision history and see a number of students responding to this question, and this student, perhaps rather facetiously, put in this comment, and after that the other comments started to disappear as students checked their answer against this one and perhaps decided that this one was more appropriate. So that's the revision history and the way that I'd use that with the class. At the end of the lesson we had about 5 minutes, and I picked students from each of the groups to feed back to the rest of the class and to explain what was wrong with the original statement and why they had reworded it or changed the statement to their answers. If you've got any questions about that, or you want a hand setting anything up in Google Docs, let me know. I'll be happy to make time to sit down and work through any issues you've got. But yeah, thanks for listening.